Oh, Laura just texted. Hey, everything okay? YouTube
She's
stream
she's
not
probably one of the
starting.
people waiting on the live.
Oh man.
That's so funny.
Oh, it's a lot live now.
Oh,
Oh,
Something
is it?
it's not
Okay.
via the promised one. It's just the channel is live, but it's not
if
the
the channel is
upcoming live
live, I
stream.
feel okay about like at least because it's not in the session, but it
Yeah.
because I looked at that before and it had not. You know what? Let's in that case I'll just switch over to that and I'll delete the session one, and then that way people will just go to our channel. They see that we're live, it does show up. So we'll just remove this. Um, I actually can't see where to. Okay. If you go to our channel right now on YouTube, it shows we're live. You can click into it. But right beneath that, it says upcoming live streams. That is not gonna start at any point.
Yeah.
That'll be
No.
listed as upcoming, but anyone can get to our
Yeah.
live through our channel.
We're good. We're fine.
Yeah. Okay. Our YouTube.
Good time for a sip of coffee.
Okay. Are we ready for the music, you guys?
Yes.
Tell me all about your latest obsession. Are you a fan? Got guilty pleasures? Share your confessions. What the hype? What the hype? Take me from fan stand. What the hype? About your latest.
That was a rewind, not a fade. I thought I was so cool fading that out. Oh, push the wrong button. Today has been a day for technical errors. If you are listening live, this is What the Hype's Last of Us Season 2, Episode 3 discussion. And if you're not listening live, you won't hear this because I'm going to redo all of that. Hello and welcome to this episode of What the Hype. Tonight we are discussing The Last of Us from HBO Season 2, Episode 3, which was called The Path, we later found out. And it's very exciting, but I am excited not just about the title of the episode. I'm excited because Chelsea has returned to discuss this episode with us. Hello, Chelsea.
Hello, Eric, and hello, everybody out there.
And for the first time on these episodes, we have the lovely Pam joining us. Pam, hello.
Hello. I'm so excited
Uh,
to be here.
Of
it's
hashtag
thrilling.
protect Pam fame.
Yes, yes. Hashtag protect Pam.
I
Everyone's
saw
doing a
someone
good job.
on TikTok commented like, "I don't care about Pam," and I was like, "I don't care about you either, stranger on the
Oh,
internet."
we're gonna find that person and block them for sure.
No, it's fine.
But we know you've been wanting to get on to talk about this show that you've been catching up with and seen with. And please, we're going to take a minute now before we get to tonight's episode to talk to you about your feelings on the show, things that we've gotten to speak to ourselves with Laura, Chelsea, and me on. So really, if we can go broad here, Pam, what do you like about the show, and how is it different from the other post-apocalyptic, kind of zombie shows that you may be watching?
Yeah, so something that I should preface all of that with is that unlike the rest of you three, I never played the video game. I do have some background of it because my brothers are big gamers, and this is a game that I remember walking in on them playing a lot and just getting sucked into, the gameplay because it was so captivating as a game, which is why it then got the adaptation treatment. So I have very little background knowledge of what happens in the game, but I was familiar with the property before it got the green light. So it was really exciting to see something that I knew had a big fan base, you know, get the green light finally. And I think that they had like tried to make it a couple times before HBO finally picked it up, so everybody was pretty excited about that. But yeah, I'm pretty much going into this blind because at this point I feel like it's probably more beneficial for the purposes of this show if I don't know what's going on. So that might make for a fun dynamic for any of you that are listening. And also for my fellow cohorts on here. But yeah, like it's funny because I'm not a big horror person, but I know that like Laura is. So something like The Last of Us is definitely up her street. But I do really like apocalyptic zombie properties because I think that there is a lot of more of like a psychological element and less like a gore element to it. And that's something that I really appreciate about The Last of Us, that it's really less about the zombies and it's more about the human condition and what happens after. That really sets it apart from something like The Walking Dead, which starts off as more of like a survival show, but the zombies are like in every episode. In The Last of Us, sometimes you don't see any zombies. Like we didn't see any zombies this time, really, in this
Right.
episode. And I think that that's fascinating, but I think that it does allow us to check in on the humans that are not necessarily like they are trying to survive, but it's so interesting to see them in like the encampment this season because they're not out in the wild. And except now they are because Ellie's left, right? But they've kind of been protected in this bubble. And that's something that you don't really see a lot with other zombie properties. A lot of times they focus on like the road trip to try and find a cure or the road trip to try and find somewhere safe. And these people already have that. So it makes for a really different and compelling element for sure.
I agree. The focus on character and developing the characters has been a strength, and certainly coming off of tonight's episode, you know, it was that time spent to build and showcase what each of our characters is feeling following the huge event of the last episode. Now, Pam, given that you had not played the game yourself, were you aware of what would be happening last week in advance, and or once you saw it, what was your reaction?
I know I was not aware. I was absolutely shocked. And it's so ballsy of a property to kill off one of its two main characters just like that, especially for them to do it right at the beginning of the season. I don't know if you all saw that coming based on the pacing. I knew that they had cast Caitlin Dever as Abby, and I knew that Abby was going to be a big person in this story, but I didn't expect her to come out guns blazing, basically, right from the start. Like that.
It's
That is
funny.
something that, like, I think that if you were not as brave as Craig Mason, you might have led up to it. You might have spent a whole season leading up to that, so you would get 2 seasons of Pedro Pascal, you know. But the fact that they just did it right at the beginning is insane.
Right. Our season 2 kind of predictions look forward episode before the season even started airing. The large part of our focus between Eric, Laura, and I was, when are they going to kill Joel? Because it was like, well, in the game, it does happen around the point that it's happened in the season so far. And so we knew it was coming, but it's like, are they going to try and stretch out that Pedro Pascal star power? Like, are they going to try and get him to stay
Right.
like as face forward on the show as long as possible? And yeah, I'm glad that it was shocking to you. The phrase I feel like we keep using, because it's true of this entire property and how they're adapting it, is bold storytelling.
Yep.
Because
really
killing off your
bold.
main character so early is such bold storytelling, and I'm so glad that that's what they're
But see,
doing
that's
here.
a testament to the fact that they know that there's enough story to keep people watching, even if they have no context for like anything else that's coming.
Yeah.
The fact that they're so confident in the original IP and in the way that they're adapting that IP for television for people that maybe have no context for the game, kind of like I do, is like I think that that's where like that's what the confidence kind of evokes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
the game I think does not miss a step in taking you along kind of you're being tugged along kind of against your will into the story of The Last of Us 2 after Joel his death and there might be some elements of that in the show, but what I think is really bold is they did not like it would have been safer to spend more time, I think, in Jackson or spend more time with Pedro. Like I was actually team like Abby arrives in Jackson on episode 7 of this season. Like I was very much like
Yeah.
because there is ultimately enough story. The story of the game of The Last of Us 2 is nonlinear, and so there is content they could have used to fill the last couple episodes, maybe building up the world without our characters physically being there, but that wouldn't have been the bold choice. The bold choice is we're going to rip the band-aid off just like we did in the game and we're gonna make everyone sit with the choices that we the writers have made and also like what you've just witnessed. And so yeah, I think among all of us here, that's been the heaps of praise that we keep throwing at the show is they continue to make really smart decisions.
And to that point, that would have been the mid season finale moment. You know, do that,
Mhm.
take 2 weeks off, let everybody sit with it, and they were like, "Just kidding, we actually don't need to do that." And I don't think that like I think that they're right because you still feel the loss. I like that they're letting Ellie sit with that and they're really
Mhm.
letting it breathe. There's that beautiful, not to get like too far ahead, but there's that really beautiful moment where she's in his room and she just breaks down because she's holding the sleeve of his jacket. And I just thought, like, what a heart wrenching way to showcase grief, right? It's like you don't
Right.
expect what's going to set you off, and the fact that for her it was just the jacket sleeve
Mhm.
was
Based
lovely.
based on what you've seen tonight and previously, like up till this point, since you don't know where the story is going, this is so exciting to ask you. Where do you think this story is going? What do you think? What kind of story do you think that this season of the show and or the show as a whole is telling, based on what you've seen?
Well, it definitely feels like a revenge arc, but it's interesting because I really think that they've done a very good job of um, making sure that we understand that in some ways Abby and Ellie are kind of two sides of the same coin, and they're both kind of now inadvertently motivated by the same thing. And it seems to me like Abby doesn't realize that what she's done is she's kind of created a version of herself in Ellie by proxy of killing Joel. Obviously, Joel and Ellie are not blood related, but I mean, they're basically the father daughter duo,
Mhm.
right? So it's interesting that she seeks revenge because her father was slain, but now she's left another daughter orphaned, for lack of a better word, and she's off
Right.
on the same journey.
Yeah. And now I do want to talk about this episode. I mean, that's what we're ultimately here to do tonight. But Pam, what I'm really curious about is your opinion of Joel's death and Abby as a character, and like, is there justification? Like, I'm just curious about like your view on that whole situation because I
Yeah.
mean we've established it's bold, but like, do you think it
Mm-hmm.
deserved it? Like, you know what I'm asking?
Yeah, I think that that's tough because I think that the the knee jerk reaction would be to say that that you know it's kind of a shitty move of her to do that after he saves her because she almost
Mm-hmm.
dies before that
Mm-hmm.
even happens, right? But at the same time, you can't fault somebody for seeking revenge out of love. Like revenge is not always the best answer,
Mm-hmm.
but it's hard to really pass judgment on her because I don't really know very much about her other than the fact that her dad dies, and you know that's a traumatic incident. That's clearly the only parent she has left. I'd
Mm-hmm.
probably go crazy too, and but that's like a
Right.
byproduct too of being already existing in a world where the circumstances are extreme.
Right.
So the fact that that's her tipping point and she doesn't back off of what she's been seeking out to do this whole time since it happened, like it makes sense. But
Okay.
it's hard to say if
Yeah.
she's a good character or not.
Hmm.
Yeah. No, I really like that. I like that your knee-jerk reaction isn't just "I hate this character," because I mean, for a lot of dude bros on the internet, that is or was the reaction when the game first came out. Was "I hate this character. They killed our precious Joel, who could do no wrong." And I mean, clearly the show is making it a very strong case that that is not the case. That Joel did something wrong and maybe doesn't necessarily tell us that he deserved what he had coming to him, but they explain to us that it shouldn't be a surprise to us that it did come for him.
And I
So,
think that he
yeah.
plays it that way. I think that
Mhm.
as a show only viewer, I think that it reads that way even as he's doing that in the finale of season 1.
The camera
He
doesn't even
he
look at
knows
him.
he knows that there are consequences, and even as they're coming back to Jackson at the very very end, he knows that what he's done is going to catch up with him.
Mhm.
I'm glad you got that, because that's 100% how I feel too. And I think it's like Mason and Druckmann really like unlocked the key to telling harrowing stories in a way, because they, I think from early on, were calling this kind of a love story, but it's a story of how far we'll go for love and the
Right.
different forms that love takes. The unconventional, the I will kill you because you killed somebody I loved kind of side of things. Turns out that's where we're spending more of our time than the more magnanimous or lofty, kind of places of love. But I would say the show has shown all types of love, but we continue to see the love that's rooted in the attachment that we have for others, and how that attachment is actually paining us continually and
Yeah.
making us make choices for violence.
Found family is a really strong,
Yeah.
thing in the show too. I'm such a sucker for the found family trope, and I
too.
think we
Aw.
see that over and over again amongst many characters. They're kind of setting that up too with Ellie and Stina, right? Who goes with her? Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yep. So, with that said, and thank you for going down memory lane here and thinking about kind of how what the show has meant to you and your reactions to it. Let's get into episode 3, The Path. And one of the things that surprised me the most is the story beats tend to. The show just takes as much time as it needs in certain places. We saw that last season. I'm thinking of episode 3, also directed by the same director, Peter Hoare, who did Long, Long Time, the Bill and Frank episode last season, was handed this episode, which is mostly in Jackson and dealing with the character repercussions of Joel's death. And so even though we've got a little bit of a time jump, 3 months, that's kind of just enough time for enough of the characters to recover, only enough to then realistically launch some kind of counterattack or begin talking about what do we do in the aftermath of that occurring. And so it just made sense to me, and was satisfying to watch kind of the immediate like aftermath, but then mostly the talking about and thinking about how our response to that action ultimately defines us as people, as a community, which the show is also hugely about.
We had speculated a lot going into this episode, like what exactly it was going to be, especially noting that Peter Hoare was returning as director. We thought, maybe we're going to get like an extended, like different, quote unquote, different kind of episode like we did with Bill and Frank last season, where we had that extended flashback episode. And maybe we'd get that with another character this time around. And I'm ultimately really glad that we didn't, because in watching this episode, I felt like it was exactly what I needed it to be, which was sort of a breath, a pause, an exhale, a moment to appropriately grieve and mourn Joel, to just to sit in that grief, and then ultimately to move on, to give us the push toward the next big thing, but allowing this moment to be small in its overall scope to a certain extent, but big in the emotions that we're feeling and that the characters are obviously feeling with each other, and trying to figure out what comes in a post infected raid on Jackson, a post Joel being killed world.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, and also that they tapped the same director from season one, episode 3, because I think that the intimacy is there, even though it's a very different kind of intimate. And so, in that sense, it makes a lot of sense. To
Yeah,
everything
I
that you
agree, and
were
I'm
into.
ultimately really glad that there wasn't any Joel in this episode
Right.
outside of name. Like there were no,
Yeah.
like we didn't get any flashbacks that we know are coming at some point in the season. There's no
Again, would have been
flashbacks.
such an easy choice to do that right
So
away.
easy, but they don't
Yeah.
make the easy
No,
choices.
they don't make easy
And
choices.
they don't force Abby on us either. And I
Mhm.
was really happy
Yeah.
with that too, because
That would have been another, like,
Yeah.
I would have expected them to do that. To your point about like the director, like this would have been a like a fine place to put a fishbowl episode in, and try and plead the sympathy for Abby case for people that
Oh.
are not
Yeah.
on that train, or maybe can't see the two sides to the argument. But I'm
Right,
sure
and
that
that was
they'll-
something
they'll
we had
figure out a way to do
speculated.
that.
Yeah,
yeah, that was something we had
and
speculated would happen in this episode. But
we
I'm
get
glad we didn't.
yeah, I agreed. And we do get some level of touch base with her crew or one member of her crew, but it's at the very end.
Yeah.
It lets the audience know that we're not on a completely off tangent, that yes, that stuff is coming, but this episode wasn't about that. And similarly, like we still got some very new things in this episode outside of Jackson. We were introduced to not one but two whole new kind of groups of people or communities. Obviously, Ellie and Dina do a lot of traveling, so there's that. But really, one of the things I think that this episode did so beautifully is in its subtlety. The many ways in which, let's take Ellie for example, we're able to talk about this idea of revenge and avenging Joel, but she throughout the episode is able to rebrand the revenge as justice, right? And the various, I was not expecting a council meeting. That is kind of an evolution. It makes perfect sense in retrospect because of the people that we've been introduced to in the show. But that very much, Pam, there's not a moment where you have to push X to agree or disagree, with the council, the rest of the council members, and that is not a thing. And so watching just the mental gymnastics and watching Ellie kind of in failing to convince the council ultimately, having to psych herself up about what she was about to do or come up with more justifications and how we reach for that. It's felt very human, but it's amazingly subtle work because it's not just sort of this brash outrage tantrum that maybe we'd expect from Ellie.
Yeah, she seems so adult in the way that she presents her case, which is different for her. I think she knows how to play the game right. And I mean, like, it sucks that they vote against her justice plight, but it also makes sense because they're voting for the good of the many, right? And that's what it really comes down to, is that they see her plight as a little bit selfish in the grand scheme of like where are our resources now? Like, we're still rebuilding. How do we protect as many people as possible in the aftermath of everything that happened, in the aftermath of all the people that we lost, trying to protect what we've built? So
Right. It's Jesse who tells her the night before that she needs to take some time to like sift away the anger from her argument to actually like get people to join in her side. And so that's when she comes with this whole justice versus revenge angle. Like, obviously, we as people who have come to know Ellie pretty intimately and knew Joel, revenge is like a big motivator for them, I think. And so
oh yeah, I'm just like,
her-
go
right.
avenge your dad, of course. Like,
Yeah,
this
yeah.
makes so much sense.
But to twist it into justice, I love the look that Dina gives her as Ellie wraps her speech. And it made me wonder for a moment if she was impressed at like this complex conclusion that Ellie has come to, or if it was, and this is what I ultimately think it was, if it was her ability to say what she thinks people want to hear in order
Yeah.
to win them over to her side. And like, this isn't about me. This isn't about Joel. This is about all of us. This is about justice.
Yeah.
This is about me being there for you and you being there for me. And like, it's a total community play, but we know that Ellie is not the community person.
Right. And I love that kind of like, she kind of hates that she has to do that, and it comes back around to kind of bite her in the ass a little bit when they're leaving. Because
Mhm.
Seth is like, oh, I thought you meant it was about all of us, you know?
Uh,
And she's like so grumpy about it. But I thought that was such a good callback to like what, you know, it's like it almost worked a little too well because now she has to play nice with this guy she's still
Mhm.
so mad at. So,
Yeah, like an unlikely ally and stuff.
right, exactly.
the Seth thing is just so interesting because, again, I think maybe one of the most interesting lines came from him this episode. He said, "Somebody shoots your brother, and you're talking about unlocking our doors," meaning that like the council refuses to sanction, uh, you know, revenge and execution for Joel's killers. How safe are we? Are we going to like not retaliate and sit down? And then I think another council or another person in the town stresses the fear aspect. They'll be back, right? They'll
Mhm.
be back.
Yeah. That's
And
actually
so
a really great point. Is
Yeah,
that
and
it's
what's
like
what,
is it showing strength in addition to serving justice?
like
right, and what's
part of me wants
interesting.
to say mercy, like showing mercy is the biggest strength. Who can show mercy? Somebody with power. But
Mm,
that's not even what the my internal monologue necessarily wants to hear right now because they just killed Joel. So I want to like and that's the conundrum.
Right. What was really interesting to hold in the back of my head watching that council meeting scene and hearing everybody's arguments was knowing that they don't know why Joel was specifically targeted for this to happen. They think it a random act he was happened upon in patrol, and they did what they could because they wanted to attack, they wanted to send a warning, whatever. They don't know that this person was specifically sought after and was specifically killed for something that he specifically did to a specific person, right? Like there's this path that leads directly to Joel's death, and nobody in that room except for Ellie is aware of that path. And even at this point, I don't think Ellie is fully aware of the connection between Abby to Joel, and so she doesn't necessarily see it as a targeted action in the same way either. I don't think Dina was passed out for the whole explanation, so nobody
Right.
knows.
Yeah, it's just so interesting pointing that out too, because if the townspeople did know, what happened, frankly, like I think it's Joel had it coming, like but I mean I think if they knew the full context, it doesn't say that that the Abbey crew is coming back at all.
Hmm.
And so you
Right.
don't have that element of fear. You don't have that element of we need to react and enforce, or it sets a bad precedent and we look weak. None of that is true. Abby and her crew came and did this thing. It was a horrible thing, but there's no reason to come back. The only thing that would bring Abby back to this town is if at some point everything and truly everything goes to hell on the West Coast, and the only refuge for humanity is in Jackson, and one of the Salt Lake crew tells her, "I know a place, remember that place, whatever." But there's no reason why she would come back, but the group doesn't know that. And so
Right.
watching the ways in which people's fear is manipulated to cause an emotional response, but then also to see that emotional response mostly fail and do like the good of the group kind of thing. Like I'm just so pleased that a group of a council is capable of acting in that kind of needs of the greater good kind of way, because it's not how I as an individual, as a viewer, feel. And it's just shocking to see, now that Ellie has like vowed to acknowledge or agree with the council no matter what their decision is, because she wants to like kiss their ass and be like a well-behaved child. Like now she has to kind of tuck her tail between her legs and still kind of find a way to break out. So
I really loved that Gail and Ellie connected in this episode. And it's
yeah.
something that occurred to me after watching last week's episode, because we had gotten that moment in episode 1 of this season between Joel and Gail. And then there was no resolution between the two of them in episode 2. And so it made sense to me to think that Gail was going to bring this information that she received from Joel to Ellie in some capacity. And so I'm glad we got that. And I thought it was really interesting to see how Ellie continues to guard her emotions in any moment where she is not completely alone. She's in the hospital after those 3 months having recovered. covered physically at least, and we hope emotionally. And I mean, that's ultimately what Gail's there for, is to determine whether she's safe or like ready to leave and go live her life again. And Ellie is doing a really great job of, like she does in the council meeting later, telling people what they want to hear, telling Gail what she wants to hear as a therapist. Like, these are my therapist answers.
I think, and the character of Gale is such an interesting one, and I love that we got actually quite a bit more of Gale this episode, because we also see her and Tommy later having a conversation.
Right.
But it's pretty apparent to me in that hospital scene, like early with Ellie, that Gale's not buying it. Like, she's letting Ellie go, but she knows that Ellie is telling her what
Oh,
she
she
just
was
wants to hear.
100% trying to trigger her emotion too. She's like,
Yeah.
actually, I want to talk about what happened at New Year's Eve.
Ah. But it didn't
So,
work. And,
no, it
it's the
didn't. It's
kind
like
of
she was
thing
ready
where
for it.
yeah, you respect the hustle a little bit. But Gail has Ellie pegged as a liar. And even Tommy's like, well, there's people who lie and there's lying. And Gail's like, no, she's a liar. Like this one is hard to watch out for. And on the one hand, we have this seemingly deliberate attention being focused on comparing Ellie and Abby, but we also have characters kind of comparing Ellie to Joel and talking about how similar they are. And in fact, one of the best examples of that this episode comes from Tommy, who says that Tommy or Joel would always kind of make up reasons to lash out and get revenge and things. And but they were fake reasons, or they weren't kind of the way in which things should be done. And so watching Ellie kind of continue to justify her behavior shows how the two of them are very much alike.
Yeah. Sorry, I had a thought and then I lost it.
No, it's all good.
And I like Gail's theory that Joel was the only person that Ellie was honest with or could be honest with. And I was curious if either of you thought that that would stand. Like, obviously, Ellie and Dina have set out on this mission together. Do you think there's ever going to come a point where Ellie can have that kind of trusting, open relationship, friendship, whatever you want to call it, with Dina that she had with Joel, in even a fraction of the amount that she had with Joel? Do we think
What
that
do you
that's
think,
a
Pam?
possibility?
I think it's tough. I think that I think it's human to want to try and forge connections, but at the same time, I wouldn't blame Ellie for keeping her cards close to the chest. We know that it's hard for her to put her faith in Joel, and at this point, all she knows is that every time she does trust somebody, they end up dead. So,
Oh, it's a
yeah,
100% success rating of trust someone, that
is.
person dies.
Right. She's like, maybe I've marked them for death. But I do think that, like, again, though, it is like once you've found a connection with somebody like that, it's hard not to yearn for it, even if they're gone. And I just think that is part of what makes her human in a world that is overrun with people that have lost humanity. So,
I like that a lot, for sure. Yeah, Ellie's choice to divulge or really be herself in front of Joel. Obviously, we got a lot of times on that on season one, watching that kind of relationship unfold. For me, what we're talking about right now goes straight back to the first time that Ellie saw Joel kill a guy. And she was enthralled. It was on the outskirts of Boston. She kind of saw what real power looked like, and she was enthralled, and she wanted to herself be that powerful. And so I think that's on some fundamental level exactly what's being talked about in this episode in some ways. Ellie's violence, Ellie's capacity for violence, and Ellie's desire to be extra and to be the one who doles out the violence. Like, Ellie's the one that knocks. Nobody else is going to give her permission to be that I know of. Dina certainly won't, because Dina's too smart for that. And it seems like Tommy also is behaving non over emotionally at this moment too. He's, nobody's going to give Ellie Nobody's going to give Ellie license to be kind of how she either naturally is, based on what like Gail was saying this episode, or what she's going to want to be or psych herself up to be. And so that part's dangerous.
to that point, I think that we see part of that at the end after she watches Joel get killed, because all of a sudden there's a switch that flips and she goes from mourning to I will kill you,
Hmm.
and I think that that manifests so well, and maybe that is a taste for what's to come, to your point about how, you know um she's kind of like, she longs for that same power.
Yeah, something that Gail says in this episode, which is an excellent callback to multiple quotes from this show, is that some people just can't be saved. Like season one, save who you can save. Some people just can't be saved, Gail says
Ah,
this time. And it's almost as if she was listening at the end of last episode as Ashley Johnson sang Through the Valley about your soul being damned. Um, that's the journey that Ellie, they're kind of framing that Ellie is setting out on, is for her to go on this journey that's going to ultimately damn her in one capacity or another.
it's interesting to see because before Ellie's done anything objectionable, I don't think this episode contained anything objectionable from Ellie. We
Oh
all
no, not at
see,
all.
and not just because we understand her, but because she's just getting started. The question of Ellie's damned or not, this nature versus nurture, and Gail's like, nurture is actually surprisingly little of it. The idea that Ellie is damned, like her nature makes her a liar, makes her evil, makes her bad. How do we feel about this? And it's something the characters openly engage in discussion of early, long before Ellie's done anything that she would regret.
I think that the fact that she gets labeled as a liar is very interesting, because trust is such a huge component for her. And we hear her tell Joe, like the moment that she just decides to truly trust him, like, just don't lie to me. And we see the how important that is to her. So it's interesting that somebody that would put so much in trust and not wanting anyone to lie to her would then turn around and be a liar. You know what I mean? Not that she
Hmm.
can't be, but it's interesting.
It makes
It
me wonder how well Gail knows Ellie at this point. Like obviously
Like,
Ellie's
how
been
much
in
did
Jackson
Joel
now.
Joel tell her about?
Yeah. And like Ellie's been in Jackson for 5 years. What have their interactions over the years been like?
Mm,
Has Ellie ever gone to therapy? I mean, Joel was, and that seemed
yeah.
like a far-fetched thing for a long time. Did Ellie ever venture that way? Certainly in this 3 months of recovery since Joel's death, she's been forced into discussions with Gail of some capacity. But it just makes me wonder if Gail's observation of Ellie as a liar and as somebody who is going to twist things to pursue the things that she wants to pursue, the things that she's already set her mind onto, if she pegged that in this 3 month period of recovery, or if it's something that she's realized over these 5 years of Ellie being around in Jackson.
definitely the look on Gail's face after Ellie gave her speech, even though Gail was like up in the rafters or whatever overlooking, was like, yeah, that was pretty good bullshit, Bob. You could tell, like, I think a few people in the audience were shown to be like s- second guessing, and Dina was like, did that really happen? Kind of a look on her face of like, yes, she told everyone what they wanted to hear, but this is 5 years of people knowing her. Like, they have to have all been equally shook by that and also not hoodwinked by it. Like, maybe a result of maybe the 8-3 decision against Ellie had more to do with not the speech she gave, but the fact that people knew that it was some ways disingenuous.
Hmm. I think that's a fair assessment.
Um, but yeah, again, painting Ellie as a liar, you do watch her lie, and especially in the hospital scene in the beginning is a perfect example. It doesn't occur to her to do anything different. Telling the truth is not an option. She wants out of the hospital. Gail is the person that can make that happen. She's gonna lie to her. She's gonna absolutely tell her with like Gail's brilliance is that she's not fooled by it and lets her go like with the understanding that she'll be watching her later, non-verbally communicated. But for me, it's like Ellie does like there's no switch to flip. She's just gonna lie to everybody that isn't Joel at any time for any reason. That seems clear to me.
Hmm.
Like she doesn't see them as equals the way she saw Joel as an equal.
Oh, I like that. Seeing Joel
Yeah.
as an equal and everybody else
And
is
so
not.
they're not people in the way that you would feel bad if you lied to somebody you cared about. Like for Ellie, I think something we're talking about here is maybe there was no other person that could ever be that for her. And now that it's gone, it's like, oh, watch out, she's a liar. So it's just very interesting questions. I have to say, the role of Dina in general has been a bit expanded, and I think it's because of this journey that they're going on together that we begin to see the beginnings of. But I'm really loving the Dina character and kind of the adaptation of it, and especially the way in which it's so clear she brings something essential to Ellie. Right, like Ellie wants to get out, but she'd have not planned the whole thing at all in a way that was actionable. She would have been back in 2 weeks, run out of food, carried too many guns. Like the fact that Dina has a map, like Ellie needs Dina.
Yeah.
And we've all
And-
been
but,
there.
But again, like she's putting trust in her. So, like to whoever, one of you brought up the point about if she could trust anyone else, and it's like, well, if she's gonna trust anyone, it's gonna be her. Because the fact that she also like waits until Dina says it's safe to leave. I
Yep.
think that speaks volumes instead of just being like, fuck you, I'm gonna just go out on my own.
Yeah.
And
No,
I think
that's
a
a
lot
good-
of that is due to the fact that Dina is one of the only people who is willing to go along with Ellie in fulfilling this kind of revenge fantasy. Like it's
Yeah.
the same thing that happened with Abby and her friends, right? Like
Mhm.
her friends stuck with her in the 5-year interim since her father was killed for the purpose of killing Joel. Like they are by her side when it goes down because they believed in her and helped her. And now we see that Dina is sort of fulfilling the same role that Abby's friends fulfilled in the killing of Joel. So it's
Yeah.
that same parallel that you drew earlier, Pam, that Abby and Ellie are turning out to be kind of two sides of the same coin, and Abby's just enabled sort of an extension or a response to herself in what she's done in Jackson.
What I love about, Abby's friends we were shown didn't really want to be there. I like to think that at least for the time being, Dina does want to be by Ellie's side, but I think and that comes from a place of care as well. Like Dina cares for Ellie, and Dina, I think, has a special window and a special insight because of Dina and Joel's relationship that, kind of shows her and she feels what Ellie was going through. More acutely, I think, than the others. Except maybe Seth, but he's not invited to the party.
Right. And to your point, she even tells Ellie, like, I loved him too. And you can tell that Ellie must believe that.
Right.
Because if not, then she would have cast her aside.
So since we are talking about Ellie and Dina more, what about that scene as they're making their way to Seattle where they're in the tent together? Like, what do we have to say about that as they're saying goodnight to each other, but they keep interrupting the goodnight for like, let's talk about the kiss. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about that.
I'm just glad they didn't bring a pun book. Otherwise the night never would have ended. No, but for me, my question to you two is if you ask someone to rate a kiss that you've given them and they come back with 6 as a number, are you offended? Or is 6 pretty good? It seems above average, right? Or what's average?
I mean, C's get degrees.
Right.
So, no, but I think in this case, like the point is that they both kind of know that they're like lying a little bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's
Yeah,
very
Dina's
like
fine to-
it's such like a moment of normalcy in a situation that is just very not normal.
Right.
It's like the I'm just a girl scene, It's like it's just two girls, two teenage girls, or
It's
So.
jarring every time they mention New Year's, like as an occasion. It's like, wait, there's New Year's Eve in this show. There's holidays in this show. This
well, the
is
fact that we
folks.
see a baseball game in this show. Like,
Oh my god! Yeah, what show is this? I think we stumbled onto the other Gabriel Luna, Catherine O'Hara show on HBO that airs baseball times. But yeah, it's certainly. Oh,
Yeah, both of those are just like there's such moments of normalcy, to your point.
yeah, and that ultimately is, I think, what they're protecting by not sending 16 of their best people to,
Yeah.
go after it. And yes, it would seem that they have more than 16 people that could go and do this job, but they are preserving, I think, the right to continue to have baseball games. And it's just not been, I think, drawn in any way that makes sense that the threat posed by Abby and her people is greater than the need for safety and preserving baseball games and cookies
Right.
and everything they have.
I wonder if too, like, if they just put like some, like maybe too much stock in the fact that they, yes, they killed Joel, but they let two young people go.
Mhm.
So, like, how bad could they really be?
Right. And now 3 months have passed. So, like,
And
surely
no
the
one's
threat
come
has
back.
passed. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a pretty good point. Chelsea, we lost you there for a second. Is
Yeah.
everything all right over there?
Yeah. I don't know what happened, but we're good.
Okay, does your screen still say recording?
It does. I hope that the earlier part was uploaded, but it's
It's live
uploading right
anyway.
now, so we should be
So yeah,
good.
I
Yeah.
think that it could be fine. Um, Before we continue our discussion on episode 3, let's hear a word from our sponsors. Didn't do that sooner, so thought I'd have to do that then. Um, all right, so one of the big moments that kind of took place away from the action was a new group of people walking in the woods and another father-daughter duo. Um, Pam, I'd love to get your thoughts and opinions because you don't know these people, um, about what that part of this episode either meant for you or how you feel about it.
It was just fascinating to see how another group of people is faring in this world, and you can tell that the whatever culture they've created as a result of living in a post-apocalyptic world is just so different from what's happening in Jackson versus like how the Fireflies were operating versus what we saw at the tippy top of season 1. So it's just like, I mean, I don't really know what to think. We didn't really get too much
It's true.
with them. It was hard to, like, for a while it was hard to tell if they were going to be, you know, adversaries, or if they were going to be like, it's like, is this predator or is this prey, I guess, is like what you're
That's
kind
a
of
great
thinking.
question, and the decision of the episode to kind of they seem like, even though they carry hammers, they
Right.
seem like they're shown to be more peaceful than other groups of people
Yes.
because it is said in the dialogue they're walking away from war, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
There's sort of an enlightened quality to the way they carry themselves, and there is a religious component. Of course, they're talking about prophets and things, but we straight up see every one of them slaughtered, or we find them slaughtered. Ellie and Dina find them slaughtered, and so that could be the world saying this is where peaceful people, this is what happens, to peaceful people on this show. Sorry. But maybe there's something to it anyway. We unfortunately, as much as we were introduced to a father-daughter group, saw them perish as well, in this episode. And so it's happening everywhere. I guess I'm going back to Kathleen's line last season, children die, Henry, like, what are you going to do? But like everybody here, unfortunately, was apparently killed by the wolves.
Well, we
Right.
don't know if it's the wolves. That's kind of like what the thought is, but there's no
I thought the
necessarily.
whistle, I thought the whistle indicated, like, later they had said, "Oh, wolf," but maybe not.
Mm.
Like when they were
I don't
I
remember
checking
for
with
sure.
what
I don't.
when they were
Yeah.
checking with what was seen. Anyway, okay, maybe it wasn't.
Well, I don't
I will
remember either
say,
way. Even like thinking back to the game. So,
Ellie and
um,
Dina speculate that it was Abby's crew.
yeah.
Um,
Mm.
and it's used as kind of a way to psych Ellie up for anyone that would kill this number of people, not dispose of the bodies properly, et cetera, are monsters that need to be, put down. Ellie's using this as justification. She thinks it's Abby's crew that did this. However, in the closing shot of the episode, we're introduced to Abby's people, this militia that she spoke of in the last episode, and I gotta say, it's not the small group of people that Ellie seemed to earlier speculate that it was.
Right. Dina had said
No.
earlier, oh, they're small enough that it's nothing we couldn't handle. Right. And that is the scary thing, is that like when they say militia, they mean a militia. Like they've got 3 tanks. They've got every single person walking along with them carrying a weapon and wearing armor. Like this is not a small group of travelers banded together. This is like enforcers of Seattle, it seems.
Yeah, they're organized.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very clear that they are. It's funny because like it doesn't they did such a good job of waiting to reveal that until the very end, because even when you see the like one of Abby's crew up, and it must be this, it's supposed to be, I'm sure it's supposed to be the Space Needle or what's left of it.
Yeah.
That's, you know, it's like that even seems like very like rough and tough, like not super sophisticated. And then once you see like the tank coming through the town, you're like, oh shit, like that is okay. Like this is maybe not gonna fare so well for these 2 girls. But
Right. Something that Ellie said that was really interesting to me, as they found those bodies and they saw the child or the children who had been killed, that she drew the line at kids. That she said that for people to do this to kids even. And I think to last episode, as Abby was getting ready to kill Joel, she said something to the effect of, there are some things that everybody just agrees is wrong. And here Ellie is saying that the killing of children is wrong. And I am obviously agreeing with that, but it's interesting that Ellie has drawn her line somewhere. And I think that's something that's that we'll have to keep an eye on as she potentially comes across other children who are murdered or who are a threat or whatever going forward in this season. That's just, I think, an interesting tidbit to hold on to.
her moral code. Even Joel had one. I mean, for
Yeah.
as many people as he killed. So
Well, I wanted to take a moment as we get towards, I think, the end of covering most of the discussion to talk specifically about Tommy, how we feel Tommy is handling the death of Joel. What I really loved, he gets the first line in this episode. There's this scene which is mostly quiet, and it's Tommy going to where Joel's body is, washing, cleaning his body a bit, and he has the line, what is it? Give Sarah my love. And it's this idea that for the violence we just witnessed on the show, that there's some solace in knowing that Joel is at peace. Or at the very least, that he's with his daughter, who we know about from the very beginning of the series. And that was a hell of an opening line that really, I think, it brought the feels for sure, but definitely made me kind of feel the peace that Joel must be at in some small way.
I was really curious to see how they were going to show Tommy reacting to all of this. I didn't know if there would be some sort of outburst, because something that occurred to me as we watched that scene was that there is a difference between Joel's body lying in that room and all the other bodies lying in that room. I mean, the unifying thing between all of them is that they died. They are lost to the people of Jackson, and that's sad on all fronts. But the difference being that the deaths at the hands of the infected were unbiased. They were just in the wrong place at the wrong time, truly. And you could say the same thing about Joel, but Joel was the intention behind Abby's visit to Jackson. She was there to kill Joel. And so again, nobody knows the full backstory behind that, but the fact that Joel was murdered versus killed in the line of duty, however you want to frame that, I thought maybe we would have a moment where Tommy would have that kind of outburst, but I'm ultimately glad he didn't, that he thought of Joel being at peace. And then his struggle in the rest of the episode was worrying about how Ellie was going to take this, and that she was going to follow too much in Joel's footsteps in seeking revenge and justifying terrible actions and that kind of stuff. And as Ellie is trying to convince Tommy to let this this faction traveled to Seattle to get Abby, um, Tommy's reaction is, "Don't talk to me like I didn't know him.
Mm.
He was my brother." And I just love that equality in relationship, not equality, not in like they have the same kind of relationship, but they are both people, the two people who were closest to Joel.
Yeah.
And so they have equal, it's like they're opposite sides of a mirror, where Ellie is reacting in rage and wanting to seek revenge. Tommy is like, we have things to do here, we can't risk this right now. And I think it's like a weighing of the scales, because Tommy obviously has some of that in him, but he also has obligation to where he is now and the people he's with now.
Yeah, Tommy's no less upset than Ellie is that this occurred,
Mhm.
and it's I don't think it's lost on him, to your point, that this was not an accident, this was murder, you know, premeditated and all
Mhm.
that. But yeah, Tommy in his role as this, you know, leader council member of Jackson just means that he's, you know, bound by stuff. You know, that's again just the fact that we got a council meeting in this episode about whether to go after Joel's killer, like I love it so much, and we don't know, you know, how Tommy voted, but it's surprising how once the motion fails, you know, Tommy seems to take that for what it is, which is that's the verdict.
Well, I think that he knows that there needs to be order in order for survival to continue.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
so even if he doesn't agree, like you said, we don't know how he votes, then he'll go with the majority just based on trying to protect what they do have and what they have built. But I also think, I mean, like, I feel like we get this too from like the moment that like these two get reunited when Joel goes to seek him out in Jackson in an effort to keep Ellie protected.
That's right.
That, like, you know, like he realizes that his brother has settled down a lot more than the last time he saw him. And I think that Tommy sees that Joel is still restless and reckless. And so maybe he does see a lot of that in Ellie. And it probably scares him because he probably always knew that it was going to get Joel killed in some capacity. And
Right.
so by trying to keep her calm, I think he probably thinks that he's saving her, or like at least prolonging the
Mhm.
inevitable if she ends up like fully following in his footsteps.
It's pretty good stuff. Do we have any additional thoughts on this episode?
I wanted to highlight the goodbye scene at Joel's grave as Dina and Ellie set out to Seattle. They stop at the gravesite where they buried all the lost Jackson people, including Joel. And I thought for a moment that she was going to maybe like leave his watch there. Like we see her take out this bundle and she's going to lay something down at his headstone. And it's not the watch, it's coffee beans. And I loved that so much. And it was a very small moment of levity in what was such a slow, deliberate, full of grief episode. And it's levity in a way for Ellie too. Like she kind of laughs at the idea that here she is at Joel's grave depositing coffee beans. Call back to last season when she talks about how terrible it smells and he just takes a loud slurp out of the thermos, right? Like, cheers to Joel. I've got my coffee here too. But it was just a small moment, and I really loved that connection right there. And if there's nothing, I have one more thing.
Yeah.
Because the one more thing that I have is looking forward. Because there was something that caught my eye in the Up Next episode that
All right.
I'll just say I didn't remember from the game. I still don't remember from the game. But there's a moment at the end of the Coming Up Next on The Last of Us where Dina is pointing a gun at Ellie. And I was like, what is happening here? I don't remember. And the thing that occurred to me, and trust me, I have not touched Last of Us 2 in 5 years. I do not remember. But the thing that occurred to me is, does Dina think that Ellie is infected, because to our point earlier about Ellie not
Oh.
telling the truth with anybody, nobody in Jackson, save for Tommy, knows that Ellie is immune. Like, that is something that has fallen by the
Right.
wayside in this season so far because it hasn't necessarily been relevant. The only thing is, in episode 1, Tommy was like, you have to keep that quiet. You can't tell anybody. And so that's
Right.
the only thing that's coming to my mind is, if Dina's pointing a gun at Ellie, she must think that she's about to turn.
That's the natural response, yeah, to that. We do see them in some level of trouble in the next episode. Yeah, I think that probably answers that question, because on brand with the trend of Ellie and Dina getting closer, it makes sense that Ellie would tell Dina of her immunity. Whether she's trying to get her not to worry about her or trying to explain the bite that somehow, Dina finds. I didn't get I didn't know when that occurred either, Chelsea, but I did get the impression that I knew where it occurs.
Okay.
I don't think it's very clear because it's all dark in the scene, but I got
You mean like location wise? Like,
I got a vibe
location-wise, I think I
location
know
wise.
too.
Yeah, I got a vibe.
Yeah.
So that's very exciting. We're tiptoeing hashtag protect Pam, hashtag
Bless.
circle back to that next episode. But yeah, Pam, it was great finally having you on, this season's discussions. We'd love to have you obviously keep coming back. And Laura will be back as well. But definitely, I don't know, any kind of parting words or anything you think about this show and where it's going for this season?
I don't know. I feel like this show keeps me on my toes, which is why it's so fun to tune in.
It keeps us on our toes, and we
Yeah.
played the game.
It's great. I love
Yeah.
that. I love that they're, it's always so nice when there's something that can be true to the source material, but still have some plot twists and turns for you all to be excited about. So yeah, I'm just
Unbelievable.
really excited to see where we go from here. And yeah, definitely will come back at some point to join you all for another reaction.
Yeah. I don't know fully what to expect from the next episode, but I think it's probably safe to say that the quiet episode that we had this time around in episode 3 is there's not going to be more of that.
Yeah, we got our breath, right?
Yeah,
we got to catch our breath, and now we're full steam ahead.
Yeah.
Well, quick note for listeners as we wrap up, we are doing these episodes live on YouTube, especially when the session starts and it all works out the way that it should. And this is happening Sunday nights after each episode airs. So we will be back next Sunday with that, and audio episodes being released on the feed. YouTube. Here are our channels on social media. We're What the Hype Podcast on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Twitch. We are on X at What the Hype Show. Our website is whatthehypepodcast.com. And if you want to email us, again, spoiler proof your subject headings, please, for Pam, hashtag protect Pam. But send that email to whatthehypepodcast@gmail.com. What I'd love to do is like a mid-season almost, which is like next episode actually,
Yeah, basically.
would be about mid-season. So, a real like full kind of moment dedicated to some thoughts and things that people are sending. So be sure to send us your emails there. And yeah, without further ado, I think that's the hype of episode 3 of season 2 of HBO's The Last of Us. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Good stuff.